I stood in my aunt's kitchen, surrounded by relatives who'd gathered for Sunday dinner. My hands trembled as I held the acceptance letter I'd been waiting 3 months to receive, an internship offer from Sterling Media Group, one of the biggest marketing firms in the state. Before I could even finish reading it aloud, Aunt Denise snatched it from my fingers. She scanned it with cold eyes, then ripped it clean in half. Handle real responsibility. She laughed, a sharp sound that cut through the room. Don't make me laugh. The other relatives joined in, nervous chuckles, forced giggles. My cousin Tanya smirked behind her phone, probably already filming this for her stories. My mother stood by the sink, eyes fixed on the floor, saying nothing. Nobody defended me. Nobody even looked at me. My name is Noah Reyes, and that was the moment I realized family could destroy you faster than any stranger ever could. I sat in my car outside Aunt Denise's house for 20 minutes, unable to move. The two halves of my acceptance letter lay on the passenger seat like broken dreams. My hands shook so badly I couldn't grip the steering wheel. Every word she'd said echoed in my skull. Too dumb. Too soft. You'll embarrass yourself. Through the kitchen window, I could see them laughing, eating dessert like nothing happened. My phone buzzed, a reminder about the internship's deadline to confirm acceptance. I had 48 hours. That night, I texted the coordinator, explaining what happened and asking if they could resend the letter. No reply came. The silence felt like confirmation of everything Aunt Denise had said. Maybe I really wasn't good enough. Maybe she was right. I stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror and barely recognized the defeated person staring back. But underneath the shame, something else stirred, a quiet, burning anger that refused to die. 2 days later, Aunt Denise called me at 7 in the morning. "Noah, get over here. My car needs washing, and you're not doing anything useful anyway." Her voice dripped with contempt, like I was some servant she owned. I'd been staying at her house for 6 months while attending community college, working part-time at her catering company to pay rent. But after what she'd done, something inside me snapped. I drove over and found her on the porch, coffee in hand, smirking. About time. Stop moping around about that internship. If you can't survive one setback, you'll never survive real work. That was it. The final insult. "You destroyed my chance, Denise," I said, my voice low but steady. She laughed. "I saved you from embarrassment. Now wash the car." I turned around, walked to my room, grabbed my things, and left. She called after me, shouting threats about how I'd regret this. I didn't look back. Quitting felt terrifying and freeing at the same time, like cutting off a poisoned limb to save the rest of my body. With nowhere to go and barely $300 to my name, I rented a tiny room at the Sunset Motel near the freeway. The bed squeaked with every movement. Wallpaper peeled in long strips from the corners. The neon sign outside flickered all night, casting red and blue shadows across the ceiling. I sat on that sagging mattress, staring at myself in the scratched mirror, and said out loud, "She's wrong about me." My voice sounded small in the empty room, but it was the first time I'd heard real conviction in it. I wasn't going to let Aunt Denise define who I was. That night, I made a list on a crumpled receipt: find work, save money, prove her wrong. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was mine. I spent hours scrolling through job listings, gig apps, anything that could help me rebuild from nothing. Sleep didn't come easy, but when it did, I dreamed of standing tall while Aunt Denise watched from the shadows. 3 days into my motel stay, I was scrolling through my phone when a video popped up, some guy talking about how he'd built a 6-figure food truck business from a $1,000 investment. Something clicked in my brain. Aunt Denise ran Prestige Catering, a mid-sized company that served corporate events and weddings. I'd worked for her for 3 years, handling everything from prep work to client calls. I knew her suppliers, her pricing, her clients, even her weaknesses. She overcharged, underdelivered, and treated staff like garbage. People complained constantly, but she had a monopoly in our area. What if I started something smaller, faster, cheaper? Something that offered better food and better service? I didn't need her permission or her approval. I had the skills she'd forced me to learn. Revenge didn't need to be loud or violent. It just needed focus. I grabbed a napkin and started sketching ideas, Reyes Street Eats. Budget, almost zero. Resources, my old grill, a borrowed cooler, and my cousin Luis's pickup truck. It was insane. But it was possible. Luis showed up at the motel the next night with pizza and doubt written all over his face. "Noah, you serious about this?" he asked, eyeing my napkin sketches spread across the bed. "Dead serious," I said. Denise always mocked cheap street food. Said it was beneath her. That's exactly what I'm going to build my business on. Luis leaned back, considering. "You know she's going to try to destroy you, right?" I nodded. "Let her try." We spent the next 4 hours planning every detail. Luis would lend me his truck on weekends. I'd handle the cooking and marketing. We'd start at the Saturday farmers market downtown. Low entry fee, high foot traffic. Our menu would be simple: tacos, loaded fries, and homemade lemonade. Bold flavors, affordable prices. Everything Aunt Denise wasn't. By midnight, we had a budget: $400 for permits, ingredients, and supplies. It would drain my savings completely. One failed weekend and I'd be finished. But I didn't care anymore. I was done playing it safe. I was done letting fear control me. Opening day arrived like a punch to the stomach. We set up our stand at 6 in the morning, the sun barely peeking over the buildings. My hands shook as I fired up the grill. Luis arranged the menu board while I prepped ingredients, trying to look confident. By 8 o'clock, the market filled with people, but they walked right past us like we were invisible. An hour passed. Then 2. We sold nothing. I stood there under the blazing sun, drenched in sweat, watching everyone flock to the established vendors. Humiliation burned through me worse than the heat. Then, just before noon, Aunt Denise's white catering van rolled past. She slowed down, rolled down her window, and locked eyes with me. That smirk, the same one from the kitchen, spread across her face. "Told you, Noah," she called out. "Stick to easy jobs." My fists clenched so hard my nails dug into my palms. But I didn't yell. I didn't react. I just nodded and turned back to the grill. She drove away laughing. Luis put a hand on my shoulder. "We'll try again next week." That night, Luis suggested we post a behind-the-scenes video on social media, just something real and raw. "People connect with struggle," he said. I was too exhausted to argue, so I filmed a quick clip, me prepping food in the motel room, talking about starting from nothing, mentioning the dream of building something honest. I posted it at midnight and went to sleep expecting nothing. By morning, my phone was exploding. The video had been shared by 3 local food influencers. Comments poured in, "This is inspiring. We'll be there next weekend. Rooting for you." I couldn't believe it. The following Saturday, we arrived at the market with twice the ingredients. By 9 o'clock, a line had formed at our stand. By noon, we were completely sold out. I stood there, hands sticky with sauce, grinning like an idiot. Luis laughed and slapped my back. "Told you, man." Then I spotted someone familiar in the crowd, Aunt Denise's assistant, Kimberly, taking photos of our stand. The war had quietly begun. 2 weeks later, my mother called. Her voice was tight, worried. "Noah, Denise is telling everyone you stole her recipes. She's saying you're unstable, that you're trying to destroy her business out of spite." I leaned against the motel wall, phone pressed to my ear, and laughed bitterly. "But let her talk." Mom sighed. "She's family, Noah. Can't you two just—" "She ripped up my future in front of everyone, Mom." She mocked me. "Where were you then?" Silence. Then quietly, "I'm sorry. I should have said something." I softened. "It's okay. But I'm not stopping." Over the next few days, I heard the whispers spreading through the family network. Cousins who hadn't spoken to me in years suddenly had opinions. Aunts and uncles chose sides. Some supported me quietly, others called me disrespectful. But every insult, every piece of gossip, just fueled me more. I worked harder. I stayed later. I perfected every recipe. Aunt Denise wanted to bury me with rumors? Fine. I'd bury her with results. A month after the rumor mill started, my cousin Tanya's birthday party rolled around. I almost didn't go, but Luis convinced me. "Show them you're not scared," he said. So I walked into that backyard barbecue with my head high, carrying a box of free meal vouchers for Reyes Street Eats. People whispered as I entered. Aunt Denise stood by the grill, arms crossed, glaring at me like I'd committed murder. Someone, Tanya's boyfriend, asked loudly, "So Noah, how's your little food truck thing going?" The question hung in the air, designed to embarrass me. I smiled, handed him a voucher, and said, "Business is great actually. Come try it yourself." Aunt Denise's face turned red. She set down her spatula and walked over, voice dripping with venom. "Still pretending you're a businessman? How cute." I raised my lemonade in a mock toast. "Thanks for teaching me everything I know, Aunt Denise. Your wisdom was unforgettable." The backyard went silent. People stared. She looked like she wanted to explode, but couldn't find the words. I turned and walked away, feeling lighter than I had in months. 3 weeks later, I was setting up for a Saturday shift when a woman in sunglasses approached the stand. She ordered tacos and loaded fries, ate quietly, then thanked me and left. I didn't think much of it until Monday morning when Luis texted me a link. "Dude, check this out." It was a review from Vanessa Ortiz, one of the most popular food critics in the region. The headline read, "Street Eats by Reyes is redefining comfort food." She praised everything: the flavors, the affordability, the authenticity. "This is what the city needs," she wrote. "Forget overpriced catering. This is real food made with real heart." The review went viral. By noon, my phone was flooded with messages from people wanting to book me for private events. Former clients of Prestige Catering, Aunt Denise's clients, were reaching out, asking if I could cater their parties. I sat in my motel room, staring at the screen, barely able to process what was happening. Aunt Denise's empire was cracking, and I'd barely even started. 2 days after the review, my phone rang. A known number. I answered cautiously. "Noah." Aunt Denise's voice was cold and measured. "We need to talk." I stayed silent. "Meet me at the cafe on 5th Street. Tomorrow, 10. She hung up before I could respond. "Luis told me not to go. It's a trap, man. She's going to try to manipulate you." But I went anyway. I had to see what she wanted. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in the back corner, looking smaller than I remembered. No makeup, hair pulled back. She looked tired. "Sit down," she said, not quite ordering, not quite asking. I sat. She folded her hands on the table. "I'll be honest with you. Business hasn't been great lately. Clients are leaving. I've had to let staff go." She paused, eyes flicking up to mine. "I'm willing to forgive what happened between us. Let's merge our businesses. You handle the street food side, I'll handle corporate events. We'll both profit." I almost laughed. "Forgive me? For what?" She bristled. "Don't be childish, Noah." I stood up. "I'll think about it." I already knew my answer, but I wanted her to sweat a little longer. A week later, disaster struck. My main supplier called and canceled all future orders. No explanation, just a curt, "We can't do business with you anymore." Panicked, I called 2 other suppliers, same story. Someone had gotten to them. I didn't need to guess who. Luis confirmed it later that day. Aunt Denise had offered my suppliers a premium rate to drop me. She was trying to starve me out. My fridge was empty. My weekend bookings were approaching fast. I spent all night driving across the city, begging smaller vendors for deals, explaining my situation. Most turned me away. But one, an older man named Felix who ran a produce stand, listened. "Your aunt tried this with another guy a few years ago," he said. "Bankrupted him. But I don't like bullies." Felix agreed to supply me at cost. It wasn't much, but it was enough to survive. I worked until 4 in the morning, prepping for the weekend. Luis found me slumped over the counter, half asleep. "She's scared," he said. "That means you're close." I nodded through exhaustion. Close wasn't enough. I needed to win. 2 weeks later, I got a call from a wedding planner named Angela. She tried my food at the market and wanted me to cater a wedding. 200 guests, full menu, premium pay. It was the biggest opportunity I'd ever had. Luis and I worked 70-hour weeks preparing. We rented a bigger grill, hired 2 part-time helpers, and perfected every dish. The wedding was at a beautiful venue downtown. We arrived early, set up in the open-air kitchen space, and got to work. Guests started arriving around 5. The food was a hit. People kept coming back for seconds, compliments pouring in. Then I saw her. Aunt Denise, dressed in a chef's coat, setting up a dessert station on the opposite side of the venue. She'd been hired to cater desserts and drinks for the same wedding. Our eyes met across the crowd. She froze. Her face went pale, then red. I just smiled and turned back to my station. For the rest of the night, I felt her eyes on me, watching every move. But I didn't falter. I stayed professional, calm, focused. And the guests loved us. Late in the evening, I found myself in the venue's back kitchen, washing dishes. The door swung open. Aunt Denise stood there, face twisted with rage. "Get out of my event," she hissed. I didn't even look up. "This isn't your event, Denise. We were both hired." She stepped closer, voice rising. "You think you're so smart, don't you? Playing the victim, stealing my clients. I didn't steal anything. They chose me." Her jaw clenched. "You'll regret crossing me." I finally looked at her, really looked at her. She looked desperate. Afraid. "I already don't," I said quietly. She opened her mouth to respond, but one of the catering staff walked in, phone out, clearly recording. Denise's eyes widened. She tried to compose herself, but the damage was done. She stormed out, muttering curses under her breath. The staff member looked at me. That was wild. I just shrugged and went back to washing dishes. But inside I was smiling. By Monday morning, the video had spread everywhere. Someone had posted it online with the caption, "Prestige catering owner has meltdown at wedding." Within hours, it went viral. Local news outlets picked it up. Aunt Denise's face was plastered across social media, mid-rant, looking unhinged. The comments were brutal, so unprofessional. I'd never hire her. Glad I switched to Reyes Street Eats. My phone blew up with new inquiries. 3 corporate clients who'd been with Prestige Catering for years reached out, asking to book me instead. My weekend schedule filled up instantly. Meanwhile, Denise's business tanked. Reviews turned negative. Cancellations poured in. I didn't gloat publicly. I didn't post anything celebrating her downfall. I just kept working, professional, calm, focused. And somehow, that made it worse for her. People saw the contrast. The composed young guy building something honest, versus the bitter woman having public breakdowns. Aunt Denise had destroyed herself. And I hadn't even lifted a finger. Late one Thursday night, I was closing up the truck when I saw headlights pull into the parking lot. My mother stepped out of her car, eyes red and swollen. "Noah, we need to talk." I wiped my hands on my apron, bracing for another guilt trip. She stood there, arms wrapped around herself. "Denise's company is weeks away from bankruptcy. She's lost almost everything." I stayed silent, flipping off the grill. "She's still your family, Noah." I stopped. Turned to face her. "So was I, Mom. Where was the family when she ripped up my letter? When she called me too dumb? When she tried to destroy my business?" Mom's voice cracked. I know I should have defended you. I was scared of her too. That hit me harder than I expected. My mother, strong, proud, admitting she'd been afraid. I softened. "I'm not trying to hurt her, Mom. I'm just trying to survive." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I understand. I don't know how to fix this." Neither did I. So we stood there in the quiet parking lot, both broken in different ways, searching for answers that didn't exist. 3 days later, I received a message from Aunt Denise. Just 2 words, "Can we talk? Please." I stared at the screen for 10 minutes, debating. Louise said to ignore it. My mother said to hear her out. Against every instinct, I agreed to meet. She arrived at the motel parking lot looking worn down. No makeup, hair limp, clothes wrinkled. She sat on the curb beside me, silent for a long time. "I need a job," she finally said, voice barely above a whisper. I blinked, unsure I'd heard correctly. "What?" "I'll do anything. Prep work, deliveries, cleaning. I need something." Her pride was shattered. She couldn't even look at me. My heart ached. Despite everything, seeing her like this hurt. But then I remembered that kitchen, that laughter, that ripped letter. I took a slow, deep breath. I am hiring, I said carefully, but only for a junior assistant position. Starting wage. Her eyes flared with anger. You'd humiliate me like that? No, I said softly. I'd give you the same start you never gave me. She stood abruptly, fists clenched. You're cruel, Noah. No. I'm fair. She stormed off without another word. I let her go. That night, I sat alone in the truck, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. My phone buzzed with new booking requests, congratulations messages, opportunities I'd never dreamed of. But none of it felt like I'd imagined. I'd wanted revenge. I'd wanted to prove Aunt Denise wrong. And I had. But seeing her broken didn't feel like victory, it felt hollow. Luis climbed into the truck beside me. You okay? I shrugged. I don't know. I thought winning would feel different. He nodded. Revenge is weird like that. You spend all this time chasing it, and when you get it, it's just empty. I stared at my reflection in the side mirror. I didn't do this for revenge, I said slowly, realizing the truth as I spoke. I did it to prove to myself that I wasn't what she said I was. Luis smiled. And did you? I thought about the business, the clients, the team I was building. Yeah. I did. For the first time in months, I felt something other than anger. I felt peace. A week later, Aunt Denise's house went into foreclosure. The news spread through the family quickly. Some people blamed me. Others stayed silent. My mother called, asking if Denise could stay with me temporarily. I said no. It wasn't cruelty, it was boundaries. But I did offer to help her find a room at a cheaper motel and connected her with a job placement service. It wasn't much, but it was more than she'd given me. Mom moved into my new apartment for a few weeks while she sorted things out. One night, over takeout, she finally apologized. I should have defended you, she said, voice thick with regret. You were right about her. She was cruel. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. It's okay, Mom. We're done talking about her. The cycle ends here. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. We sat in silence, letting the past finally settle. Some wounds heal. Others just stop hurting. Either way, I was ready to move forward. 3 months after the wedding disaster, I signed the lease on a small restaurant downtown, the dream I'd sketched on napkins in that motel room. The space was tiny, barely enough for 20 tables, but it was mine. Luis and I spent weeks renovating, painting walls, installing equipment, designing the menu. Opening night arrived with a mix of terror and excitement. I stood outside, watching people line up, and couldn't believe it was real. A local TV crew showed up to cover the story, from food truck to restaurant, a success story. During the interview, they asked what inspired me. I thought about that ripped letter, that motel room, those endless nights of doubt. I wanted to prove that your starting point doesn't define your ending, I said. The reporter smiled. And what would you say to people who doubted you? I paused. Thank you. Your doubt became my fuel. The restaurant filled quickly. Laughter and conversation echoed off the walls. I stood in the kitchen, watching through the window, and felt something I hadn't felt in years, pride. A week into the restaurant's opening, I was closing up late when I noticed someone standing across the street. Aunt Denise. She stood under a streetlight, staring at the restaurant, her catering van parked behind her with a "For Sale" sign in the window. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her, shoulders slumped, face hollow. For a moment, our eyes met. I expected anger, or bitterness, or another confrontation. But there was nothing. Just emptiness. She turned and walked back to her van, got in, and drove away. I stood there for a long time, watching the taillights disappear. For the first time, I didn't feel hate or anger or even satisfaction. I just felt closure. She'd lost everything trying to destroy me. But I'd gained everything by refusing to let her define me. I locked the door and went home. The past was finally behind me. And the future was wide open. Weeks passed. The restaurant thrived. We expanded the menu, hired more staff, started catering larger events. My mother helped with bookkeeping. Luis managed the food truck, which we kept running on weekends. One afternoon, I received a message from Aunt Denise. Just 4 words: "You won. Congratulations." I stared at the screen, unsure how to respond. Part of me wanted to gloat, to remind her of everything she'd said and done. But another part, the part that had grown through this entire ordeal, just felt tired. I typed back, "No. I just stopped playing your game." She started typing, stopped, started again. Then, "Good luck, Noah." I never responded. Some victories don't need applause. Some battles end not with explosions, but with quiet acceptance. I closed my phone and got back to work. There were orders to fill, customers to serve, dreams to chase. Aunt Denise was no longer part of my story, and that felt like the greatest victory of all. Months later, business was booming beyond anything I'd imagined. We'd opened a second location, hired 15 employees, and started a catering division that served corporate clients across the state. But the thing I was proudest of wasn't the money or the success. It was the people. I started hiring young adults who'd been told they'd never make it, kids from rough backgrounds, dropouts, people who'd been written off by society. I gave them real training, fair wages, and respect. One of them, a 19-year-old named Dante, reminded me of myself. Quiet, hardworking, full of doubt. I took him under my wing, teaching him everything from cooking to business management. "You really think I can do this?" he asked one day, eyes wide with disbelief. I smiled. "I know you can. Someone once told me I couldn't. Proving them wrong was the best thing I ever did." Every time I trained someone new, I thought of that ripped letter, that motel room, that burning need to prove my worth. Success had become my revenge. But peace was the real victory. A year after opening the restaurant, I stood on the rooftop terrace we'd added, watching the city lights shimmer below. Luis joined me, handing me a cold drink. "You ever think about her?" he asked. I knew who he meant. "Sometimes," I admitted. "But not in the way I used to." He nodded. "You proved her wrong." I shook my head. "No. I proved myself right." That was the difference. This journey had never really been about Aunt Denise. It had been about Noah Race, the kid who'd been told he was too dumb, too soft, too nothing. I'd spent so long trying to prove others wrong that I forgot the most important thing: proving myself right. My phone buzzed with a notification, another 5-star review. Another booking request. Another life being built, one meal at a time. I smiled and pocketed the phone. The past was done. The pain had faded. What remained was gratitude, for the struggle, for the growth, for the reminder that rock bottom is just another place to build a foundation. Aunt Denise had tried to bury me, but she forgot that seeds grow best in darkness. And I was blooming.